allegiance, if you don't mind. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I'm going to lead us in prayer, and we've got a full night planned for you. We've got Eric McElvenny. He's going to be here. And he's going to be speaking us and challenging us and enlightening us. And this whole night is the celebration of our veterans. The freedoms that we have in this country are because of them and their sacrifice. And we want to honor them tonight. Also, my friend John Branyan is going to be here. And he's going to be making us laugh a little bit and probably poking fun at me. And so that'll be fun. But so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dismiss our tables, and this side is going to go that direction, around that way, get your food, and then go back here and get your drinks. This side will go that way and get your food over there. And I'll dismiss you when you're ready to go. So let's pray, and we'll begin our evening. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for this time together in which we could honor those veterans who have served and sacrificed for our country, so that we might have the freedoms that you offer to us. And Father, I thank you for loving us. Thank you for the blessings upon our nation. And I pray that tonight would be honoring to you, most of all, and also to the men and women who have served. And Father, I thank you for the food that you provided from the ground, and ask for your blessing over our time of fellowship tonight, and glorify you and your Son, Jesus Christ. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. This table, that way. This table, that way. Okay, everyone, I think we're about ready to start. I guess I neglected to introduce myself when I first came up here. I'm Gary Varvel, and I go to church here. So welcome to Harmony. We love having you here. So many of you may not know, what I do for a living is I draw cartoons. And I make fun of the people in Washington, D.C., usually. And we just had an election on Tuesday night. And so I want to show you the cartoon I drew for after the election. The red wave didn't turn out to be a red wave. It turned into a little ripple. So the elephant's still looking for it. So the next slide, I just want to show some Veterans Day cartoons that I've drawn in the past. Have you hugged a veteran today? So we have a bunch of them here, so I guess they're all wanting hugs, so be sure you hug a veteran before you go home. Next cartoon. I thought I would show that we have, traditions of, this generation and that generation. So a younger generation thanking a former generation for their service. And so this was a cartoon just showing it, two different generations thanking one another for their service. Next cartoon. Another thank a veteran. Normally I'm poking fun at people, but this is not funny. I had a lady come up to me at church one time, and she says, somebody told me you're a cartoonist. I said, well, yes, that's true. And she goes, well, what cartoon do you draw? And I said, well, I draw the editorial cartoon. Where's that in the newspaper? Well, that would be on the editorial page. Oh, you're the guy that draws the cartoons that are not funny. Many times, yes. Of course, that's not the main objective of an editorial cartoon, just like the main objective is to express an opinion, and humor is a tool that we use, and sometimes it's not the right tool, like in Veterans Day. Next cartoon. Now, I wanted to do something that showed the sacrifice, and so we have veterans who have lost limbs, and so I wanted to show Uncle Sam thanking a veteran. Another cartoon, and then many veterans have lost their lives or have died eventually. We all are faced with that destiny, and so I hope what we do tonight is one of the things, is not just honor those who have served, but also think about our own mortality and where will we spend eternity. Next cartoon. This is the cartoon I drew after 9/11. This cartoon was made into a poster at the Indianapolis Star when I was there. We sold it to raise money for the relief effort in New York, and it raised $130,000 on just this cartoon. And when that event happened, and of course I'm documenting history at this point, and I'm looking at the news coverage, and I'm trying to figure out what to draw. And the idea came to my mind that the Murrah building, the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, there was this photograph of a firefighter carrying a small child away from the rubble, and I remember thinking of that photograph, and I thought how ironic that a firefighter has become the victim now. 343 firefighters died in those towers in New York that day. And it also made me think of a Bible verse. John 15:13 says this: "No greater love is anyone than this, than a man would lay down his life for his friends." And so when I would sign posters for people, when they would come and purchase the poster, I would sign it, my name, and then I would put John 15:13. And I only had one person tell me they didn't want the Bible verse. Prayed for them. So this was the cartoon I did honoring our firefighters. Next cartoon. And this is where we are today with the economy. We may need to move back in with our parents. So anyway, that's a little bit of what I do. But it's not about me tonight. It's about you veterans. And now I think we need a little humor. Not what I do, but from John Branyan. John Branyan and I have been friends for several years. I heard about him from another comedian, and he said, he told me, he says, "I know a Christian guy in Kokomo. He's a comedian. You need to meet him." And John and I have really hit it off, and we've been good friends, like brothers from other mothers, for several years. We do an online Bible study on YouTube on Thursday nights. If you go look it up, it's called Wise Fools. And John Branyan and Gary Varvel do that. We do that weekly. We've been doing it for 2 years. But without any further ado, I want to introduce to you and give him a warm harmony welcome, John Branyan.
Thanks. Gary Varvel, everybody. Your own Gary Varvel. Every church should have a Gary Varvel. Do you agree? You guys know Gary Varvel? Is there anybody here who's from Harmony Baptist Church? All right. Not as many as I thought. Not 100% of the room. Well, this is going to be good. This is an event. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You ever thought about that? Like, everything we do is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You know, it happens once. This gathering of people is never going to be assembled ever again exactly like this. It's just going to happen tonight, and you are all part of it. Doesn't that make you giddy? I'm the only giddy one? Okay. I didn't always have this philosophy. I learned this when I was doing a show out in Nebraska. I live in Kokomo, and that's the proper level of enthusiasm for that announcement. Good for you. But I was out in Nebraska doing a show for some thespians, some young men and women in the theater. And there was about 2,500 of them in this big room, and the main speaker for that night was a gentleman, middle-aged guy, and his wife who came in from Utah. And he seemed like a pretty nice guy. He bounced up on stage, and he's like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, young men and women, my wife and I are delighted to be here with you today. This is an event. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. We came all the way out here from Utah just to be with you because we love the theater, and we love young people, and we love the potential that is represented in this room tonight. And some of you are looking up at me, and you're going, oh, you're from Utah? You're from Utah? What's in Utah? And I'm telling you what, it doesn't matter where you're from. There's something special about every place on the planet, and there's something special about every person on the planet. For example, I learned that when my wife and I were in the airport today on the way out here, in the airport at our hometown, we just missed seeing Peter Dinklage by an hour. And you guys are like, who is Peter Dinklage? He's that little guy he was an elf, and he's in Game of Thrones, but that's not important. The important thing is that the most exciting thing that happened to this guy was he missed seeing Peter Dinklage by an hour. And so I'm in the back of the room, and I'm listening to him, and my old, jaded, cynical self, there was a crack in that armor, and I thought, you know what? This guy is onto something. He's probably leading a happier life than I lead because he's figured out how to find something to celebrate in every little thing that happens to him. So I turned over a new leaf. I decided I'm going to be more like that guy. So I went home and I did a little research in Kokomo, Indiana. And I discovered that Martin Luther King Jr.'s motorcade went down the street where my house is. So I just missed seeing Martin Luther King Jr. by 40 years. And I'm available for pictures after the show. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what's going on, what you think is going on in your life. It's important. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. And sometimes we get distracted by the big, glitzy, glamorous things, and we go, oh, my thing is not big and glitzy and glamorous, so it's not worthwhile. Gary and I do a Bible study every single week, and it's a huge crowd for us when we have 13 people there. Woohoo! I don't think any of you have ever seen it, have you? Shame on you. Oh, you have? Okay. Every week, I'm going to hug this lady after the show. I did a show in Branson, Missouri. Are you guys familiar with Branson? Any of you familiar with Branson? Did you guys forget this is live? I can actually see you sitting out there. We can interact with each other like human people do sometimes. Branson people, you guys familiar? Okay, if you're not familiar with Branson, I need to set the stage a little bit. Branson is like Las Vegas with all of the fun sucked out. Branson is a family town with a lot of shows. They have a lot of shows, and there were 136 shows in Branson when I was doing my show. I was set to do 8 months in the Circle B Chuck Wagon in Branson, Missouri. Now, in order to get people to come to your show in Branson, Missouri, you have to do a thing called nooking. Some of you who've been to Branson have experienced this. It's where all of the entertainers come to where you're trying to eat breakfast, and they do little teasers. You know what I'm talking about? Some people are nodding. They go and they do little bits of their show to try to entice you to come and see. And it's the most degrading thing. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. You don't like it. You just want to eat a waffle and drink some juice. You don't want a bunch of people doing magic tricks and riding unicycles, but that's what nooking is. So I was following the people who are juggling, and they're eating fire, and they're riding around on unicycles, and they're trying to get people to come to their show. I was following that. And this is all I do. This is all I do. So my nooking looked a little bit like this. Picture a guy like taming lions and eating fire, and then me coming out afterwards and going, hey, my name is John, and I do a show at the Chuck Wagon. I'm really funny. And then I would fall on the floor and weep. Now, my nooking technique was so effective that for the entire engagement of my show in Branson, Missouri, the average size of the audience was 6 people. 6. Now, if you know how averages are calculated, that means that some of the shows were substantially smaller than that. The night that I'm going to tell you about, there was about 8 people in the audience, so it was kind of a big night for me. There was a little family of 4 down here that was in the wrong theater. They thought we were going to play bingo, and I didn't tell them. There was another little couple over here that was trying to see Cirque du Soleil, and they were in the wrong place. And then there was an elderly couple that came in just about the time the show started. And when I say elderly, I mean she had a Bible under her arm that was signed to her by Moses. So they came in and they sat down. She was had a walker, and he was in a wheelchair, had his leg up in front of him. So he started the show. Lights go down, and I go out, and I give it my all. And I'm pretty physical when I perform, and so I'm down on the floor, and I'm kind of rolling around. I got my back to the audience. 10 minutes after the show starts, back to the audience, and I hear a chair push back from the table. And then through the darkness, I hear this old woman's voice go, "This is the stupidest thing I have ever seen in my life." And she and her husband proceed to walk out of the theater. But remember, they don't move very quick, so it takes them like 5 minutes to leave. And I waited because I'm polite. And as the door was swinging shut, I'm standing on stage, and I had 2 thoughts go through my mind. The first thought was, what in the world am I doing up here? Have you ever had that thought? Have you ever had things go so badly that it's caused you to go pause and go, this is a complete and utter waste of my time. I'm not accomplishing anything here. This is a train wreck. Why don't I stop doing it? Why don't I do something that matters? That was my first thought. And my second thought, which I think was God whispering to me. My second thought was this. That woman was 136 years old. She had seen a lot of stupid things, but I was the stupidest. That's right. That's right. It's never bad to be number one. We live in a culture that doesn't know how to laugh. You know, everybody takes themselves pretty seriously. I don't know if you've noticed that, but everybody is so tolerant and inclusive that they hate each other's guts. And I think that we in the church should set the bar for the rest of the world and show them how to laugh. Would you agree with that? 4 of you, okay? The rest of you. I think we should, because we got the most stuff to laugh about. Christians do, but the church people, we got the most stuff to laugh about, because we get spent forever in heaven. None of this stuff matters. You know, your lot in life, the things that we get so worked up about, they don't matter. If you're a doctor down here on earth, there's no sickness, there's no disease in heaven. We don't need you. If you're a lawyer down here, you probably won't get to heaven. So right? So we got to lighten up. You know, there's so many things that we should be laughing at, but we don't. We're afraid. We're afraid that if somebody sees what's wrong with us, that it's going to diminish us, and it doesn't. I get this question all the time. When I do comedy in different places, I travel around. This is what I do for a living. I know it's hard to tell, but this is what I do for a living. I can't make a living just in Avon. I got to go to other places sometimes, you know, like Muncie. I do cruise ships. I do comedy clubs. I will perform in colleges, and I do churches quite a bit. But the church people are the only people that ask me this question. Never get it in the clubs. Never get it on the ships. Just the church people. Somebody will walk up afterwards and go, "Do you think God has a sense of humor?" I'm I'm like, well, I think he made church people. Of course, God has a sense of humor. He has to have. Where did we get it? We didn't think up laughter. That wasn't our idea. That was given to us by a higher power that knew we were going to need it to get through life. He knew we were going to have hardship. He knew we were going to struggle. He knew we were going to get married. He knew stuff was going to happen. And so laughter is a gift. It's a gift, and that gift is in every single one of you. It's in all of us. It's in you. God put something stupid in every single one of you that the rest of the world is supposed to laugh at. And when you cover up your stupidity, you are robbing people of a blessing. That is called a sin. So the rule is you have to notice what's funny about yourself and acknowledge it. Then you can laugh at other people. That's the rule. It's like you should never laugh at other people. Why not? You know, sometimes other people are funny. I know there are people in this room. I have people in my family who are like, I will not tolerate somebody laughing at me. You can laugh with me. I'll laugh with you. But I will not tolerate you laughing at me. And I'm like, okay. But I guarantee if you and I are laughing with each other, we are laughing at somebody else behind their back. We need more of those people. We need the people who are not afraid to be laughed at, aren't afraid to be the targets, because we desperately need it. We need the laughter. And Christian people, there's a lot of stuff that we should be laughed at for. But we don't acknowledge it because we're so steeped in it, we don't see it. We say stuff. We say stuff like, we're just here to introduce people to Jesus. We just want to introduce people to Jesus. And Jesus already knows everybody, doesn't he? Like, I know how many hairs you have on your head, but I'm not good with names. I heard a preacher say God is moving here. God is moving here. And I thought, wow, this must be a nice neighborhood. He lives in heaven. He's moving here. Your property value is going to skyrocket. Can you imagine having God as a neighbor? That would be awful, wouldn't it? I feel like he's always watching us. We put up a privacy fence. It's doing nothing. Really nice lady in church walked up to me recently. Sweet lady walks up and she says, John, God is not finished with you yet. And I think she's probably right, but I do think he's done making improvements. You know, because I turned 50 several years ago, and things are still changing, but they're not getting better anymore. It's like God is looking down every day. All right, I'm not done with John yet. What can we do? I know, we'll push the veins in his legs a little closer to the surface. So when he wears shorts, it looks like an aerial map of Argentina. We'll take the hair off the top and jam it in his ears. And shove a bunch up his nose. It's like I got two little car washes down there. Get that one long one that just grows straight out. You know what I'm talking about? Makes a right angle and goes parallel to the floor. You can't see it. It's coming right at you in the mirror. Just gets longer and longer. I didn't even know it was there until the guy sitting in front of me at church started going like this. I got this out of a church too. I did not make this up. This was given to me by the pastor of the church. He even signed it. I found this in a church building in the little room that you go through. It was sitting on a table in that little room you go through before you get into the sanctuary. You guys know what I'm talking about? What do you call that room? Foyer? Did somebody say narthex? Who said that? That's what they said. They said, did you get that out of our narthex? And I was like, the what? I thought the narthex were hunted to extinction 100 years ago. I thought we killed them all and made coats out of their pelts. Is that narthex? This is imitation vestibule. Come on, that's a great joke. The point is, my friends, that this was inside the building. It was right under their noses. And they'd walk past it hundreds of times and never saw it. So I just pulled it off the table and showed it to them. It's the official Broad drop-off location. Is this not intriguing to anybody else in the room? The official Broad drop. How many unofficial places have you dropped them off on Sunday morning? And you have no idea what happened to them. Hey, you dropped that off. I'm going to need you to see some ID. If I was an atheist, I would go to this church just to see what the choir looks like. You can't make that stuff up. That's God deciding what's funny. We don't decide what's funny. God decided already what is comedy, and we just discover it. Like fire and electricity. We didn't invent those things. We just discovered them. And the same thing is true with laughter and comedy. God has already decided what's funny. All we do is discover it. And we don't get to decide ourselves. You know, some of you have said, well, that's not appropriate. I don't think that's funny. That's not appropriate. Well, you don't get to decide, you know. There's certain things that are funny, and they just are funny because God made them that way. And no matter what we do to try to hold it back, it's going to come out. Eventually, you're going to do comedy, like it or not. You're going to sneeze. And there's no way to pull that off with any dignity at all. Sneezes fall into several categories. People like me, you always know when I'm about to sneeze because I give a big performance leading up to it. I'm like, and then it's just gone. It disappears. And then I have a friend that there's no warning when he sneezes. You're in the middle of a conversation and psha! And then my baby sister, Bonnie, when she sneezes, and it's usually just girls. It's usually just the ladies that do this. There's a big buildup. She goes, that cannot be good for you. Ladies, you can't have without chew. That has to go somewhere. It's going to wind up on your thighs. That's not cellulite. That's just unreleased chew. Farts are funny. I know some of you are like, no, they are not. And with all due respect to you proper people, you're wrong. They're proof that God has a sense of humor. They're not just funny, they're divinely funny. It takes the mind of a loving God to come up with the perfect universal punchline. Everybody has access to it. It requires no setup. You don't have to speak the language. And no matter how many times you have told it before, it still gets a laugh. Genius. I picture God up in heaven after he made man, pretty proud of himself, brings the angels over. Hey, come here. You guys, come over here. Look at what I made. It's man. Now, from time to time, gas is going to build up inside of him and have to come out. I could have had it float out through his pores. That's what I did with the plants. But I had a better idea. Check this out. That's hysterical. What's that smell? I know, I thought that up too. That is so deaf people can appreciate them. Jesus went around with 12 fishermen. Fishermen. Do you think they were sitting around a campfire? Oh, excuse me. No. James and John were called the sons of thunder. It's a Greek joke. All right. Any questions so far? All right. So the message is simple, you guys. There's a lot of comedy that needs to happen, and we are going to have to shoulder that responsibility ourselves. We can't count on the pagans to do it. They got nothing to laugh about. There's no joy outside of Christ. It's got to come from us, right? We got to be the ones who do it. So let's do it. Start paying attention. It's right under your nose. Pay attention to the stupid stuff that you do, and then share it with people. Share it with your loved ones first, and then share it with strangers. Send it out like doves to the people around you. Notice it. You've all done this. At some point in your life, you've been driving down the road, and you pass a semi-truck, and you lean towards a window and go, that is fairly stupid. You know what you've never seen? A semi-driver passing you and going, but for some reason we think we can boss semi-drivers around. We don't do that with anybody else. You never pass the construction zone and look at those guys and go, come on. I'm going to keep doing this till everybody gets it. It's everywhere. I was in Cracker Barrel recently. True story. You guys have Cracker Barrel down here? Okay. Some of you are just not going to participate, are you? No matter what I do. Went into Cracker Barrel, and I ordered an omelet, a ham and cheese omelet. And the person taking my order said, "We do not serve omelets at Cracker Barrel anymore." And I said, "Oh, all right, I'll just have a bowl of oatmeal." And the person taking my order said, "We do not serve oatmeal at Cracker Barrel anymore." And I said, "Do you guys still have crackers and barrels?" I said, "Is this like a nationwide thing?" She said, "Yeah, they're not serving omelets anymore at Cracker Barrel." And I went, "Okay, let's see how that works out for you guys. I guess I'll just have the old timers breakfast." And she said, "How do you want your eggs?" I said, "Scrambled with ham and cheese in them." She didn't think that was funny. Little Caesars is a pizza place. You guys have Little Caesars here? Let me see some hands. All right, we're starting to rally now. Got some stuff in common with us up north in Kokomo. Little Caesars started out being pizza pizza. That was their byline. You remember why they said pizza pizza? Right, because when you ordered one pizza, you got a second one for free. Remember that? So you're like, "Hey, we want a pizza." It's pizza pizza. You get a second pizza for free. And you know what? If you didn't want that second pizza, that was too bad. They forced it on you. It's like, take this other pizza because we're just going to. And so it doesn't say a lot about the confidence in a product if they're giving you the second one for free, even against your will. You know, it's like they knew that somebody was going to go, "This is not very good." It's like, we know. Here's another one. That's the remedy for bad pizza, more bad pizza. Now, Little Caesars, do you know what their motto is now? I mean, they still use pizza pizza, but it's also, anybody know? Hot and ready. That's what they've come up with. Hot and ready. It's like, is it any good? It's available. No waiting. I went into the post office recently. You guys have a post office? Let me see some hands. Okay. Went into the United States Postal Service to mail a package, and the person behind the counter said, "I'm not making this up, do you want insurance with that package?" And I said, "What is insurance?" And they said, "Well, you just pay a little extra money to make sure that nothing happens to your package." And I said, "It's going to be in the hands of postal employees as soon as I let go of it. What are you guys planning to do to it back there?" She goes, "No, it's just a precautionary thing, to make sure." And I said, "No, this is a racket. This is what the mafia does, isn't it? It's like protection money for my mail." "Hey, that's a real nice package you got there. Be a real shame if it was to have an accident." Just open your eyes. You can find funny stuff everywhere. All right, I'm gonna run out of time here, so I'm gonna close, and I'm gonna close with two things. First, I'm going to tell you a street joke. This is not a joke that I wrote, but this is a joke that I'm telling you so that you can take it with you. Part of our mission, since we have to bring comedy to the dark world, is we have to have something to say that will make people laugh. And some of you don't know a single joke, so I'm going to remedy that tonight. I'm going to tell you this joke, and then you can take it with you, and you can spread it around and spread good cheer. And then I will end with my favorite scientific finding of all time. So when people stop you in the streets and ask, what's your favorite scientific finding of all time, and you know they will, you can be able to say this. All right, first a street joke. I've only heard this joke one time in my entire life, and I'm a person who hears jokes all the time. Heard it one time 20 years ago. Now I'm giving it to you. A chicken walks into a library, walks up to the counter, and says to the librarian, "Book." That's not even the joke. So the librarian hands the chicken a book. The chicken sticks the book under her wings, goes out the door, disappears down the street. The next day, the chicken comes back, returns that first book, and says to the librarian, "Book, book." So the librarian hands the chicken 2 more books. She sticks them under her wings, goes out the door, disappears down the street. The next day, the chicken comes back, returns those 2 books, and says to the librarian, "Book, book, book." So the librarian hands the chicken 3 books. She goes out the door. And the librarian thinks to herself, I'm sensing a pattern here. Something is going on. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. She's inquisitive. So she follows the chicken out the door, down the street. The chicken leaves the city limits and goes out into the country, turns into the long gravel driveway of a farmhouse, walks past the farmhouse, past the barn, into the 40 acres behind the barn. At the very back of the property, there is a pond. And on that pond, there is a lily pad. And sitting on that lily pad, there is a frog. The chicken walks up to the edge of the pond, lays those 3 books down in front of the frog, and the frog says, "Read it, read it." If some of you are staring at me, but you're going to tell that joke, fold your arms, act like you're not going to tell it. The beautiful part about that joke is you can make it your own. You don't have to tell it exactly the way I told it. Every personality has a different way of telling that joke, and it's perfectly okay. And here's the thing. Even if you tell it wrong and you flub it up, it's still going to get a laugh, because then people will be laughing at you instead of with you. All right, my favorite scientific finding of all time. My dad was a science teacher, and so I collected science facts, not on purpose, but because I had no choice. This is my favorite. According to science, goldfish have a 6-second memory. That sort of makes the whole evening worthwhile, doesn't it? That little trivia. It makes sense that a fish would have a short memory. You can tell that by looking at the system that we use to catch them. That would never work on an animal that could remember stuff. Big school of fish swimming around, drop a worm on a hook. Right in the middle of them, fish is thinking, "Hey, there's a worm." Well, Frank's got it. It's a trick. It's a trap. They got Frank. He's gone. He's gone. Hey, there's a worm. Then the scientists tell us fish is brain food. Huh. I went sport fishing with a friend of mine recently, and I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's pay lake. You go to a pay lake, you pay money for bait, you burn the same gasoline in the boat, it costs money, but then you let the fish go. You just turn them loose. It's such a dumb idea. Human beings are the only animals on the planet that would ever conceive of catch and release. A grizzly bear is never going to storm into your camp, yank you out of your sleeping bag. Go back and tell his buddies in the woods he was that big. He's a scrappy little guy. Happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service to all of our veterans. So give them a round of applause. And Gary's coming back up.
John Branyan, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for making us laugh. He's right. We need to find humor in life. You know, I don't know if you were disappointed in the election the other night. I think that along with voter ID, we should have IQ tests in order to vote. Unfortunately, those tests would come back negative, I think, in a lot of cases. Just saying. But speaking of which, we're ready for our main speaker tonight, and I hope that you'll help me welcome him. He's a Paralympic, and he's served our country, and he's made the sacrifice, and he deserves a warm Harmony welcome. Come up on it, Eric McElvenny.
All right. Thank you so much for the welcome. And it's an honor and privilege to be here this evening and to share some of my life with you. I wish my wife could have came along. She's at home. We have 12 kids at home, so someone had to stay home. All right, we only have 5 kids at home. Okay, it's 3. We got 3 kids at home, but it feels like 12. I don't know if anyone has kids, but she couldn't come along with me this time around. But I'm going to share our story with you. You know, and our story is unique to us. You know, any one of you could be up here and sharing a story, but you're stuck listening to me for the next 3 hours. So, what? I don't have 3 hours? Okay, all right. It'll be a little bit quicker. But I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to start my story. And I'm going to start it in Hawaii. Has anyone been to Hawaii before? All right, quite a few of you. It's a good place to be. If you haven't been there, it's a lot like Avon. A little bit. All right, it's nothing like it. Think of Avon and think of total opposite, and then we're in Hawaii. So picture us in Hawaii. We're there, and I am 132 miles into a race. And this race is the Ironman triathlon. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Ironman triathlon, but I describe it as a long day because that's kind of just what it is, and everyone can relate to that. It's a long day. You swim 2.4 miles. And then you ride a bike 112 miles, and then you run a marathon, 26.2 miles. So it's a 140.6 total, and I'm 132 into it. That's we're stepping into the story. So I'm done swimming. Do we have any swimmers out there? One. Okay, we got one person who could swim. I guess I expected more, but that's all right. I'm done. In my head, I was Michael Phelps ripping through the Pacific Ocean. Until the next day, I saw a video. I was like a giraffe in a bathtub. But I'm done with the swim. I'm done with that bike ride. Over 5.5 hours, long time to be on a bike, but I'm done with that. Now I'm 18 miles into the marathon. 18 miles into the marathon. Has anyone run a marathon before? Yeah, all right. How about like a half marathon? Or a 5K? Has anyone done like a 5K turkey trot? Has anyone like walked out to their mailbox and back before? There we go. All right, a couple more hands went up. All right, so everyone here, you can relate to where I was mentally and physically 132 miles into this race, 18 miles into the marathon. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, but I can't see that light, and I don't even know if I'm in the right tunnel because I was in pain. My body hurt. My, you know that side cramp you get when you're walking to the mailbox? I had that everywhere. Every major muscle group was seizing up. My hips hurt. My feet hurt. Well, my left foot hurt. My right foot isn't there. I'm a right below the knee amputee, so I don't have to worry about getting blisters on my right foot when I'm running. Yeah, you got to take the wins when you can get them, right? But I brought some props. This is my running leg. I got the blade, doubles as a weapon, but this is what I run in, so my limb fits directly into this cool carbon fiber prosthetic socket. And although I don't get blisters on this here foot, I do have to worry about my limb having some skin breakdown and some issues. And I was getting a little uncomfortable when I was feeling it, and I'm thinking, should I stop and fix this? And then I didn't have to make that decision because my body made that decision for me. At that point in time, I ran out of energy. my run slowed to a jog, slowed to a walk, to a staggered, and then I sat down on the side of the road. I sat down on the side of the road. I was at the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii, with only 8 miles and some change left, and I was sitting on the side of the road. It's not where I wanted to be. You know, I'd worked for months to get to this race, to this event, and it was more than just a race to me. It was kind of personal. It was like me proving to myself something, and I'm out there, and we're doing it, and I'm on the side of the road, not where I wanted to be. But don't worry, I did what any great triathlete would do. I took my leg off. Maybe not every great triathlete can do that, but I could, and I did. I took that leg off, and it just, I felt so good, the relief of just imagine walking around in your high heels for an entire day, and you get home, and you kick those heels off, and that relief you feel in your feet. I've never done that. I'm just saying it's probably similar. Pastor John said it was a lot like that, so I'm just, but it felt good, so I'm hanging out with my nub. Sometimes my stump. Sometimes I call him Jason, but I'm not going to do that today in case there's a Jason out there. That usually gets awkward for them. So I'm just hanging out with my stump, and we're doing our thing. My leg's sitting next to me, and then I did the second best thing that I could have possibly done at that point in time in my life. I ate a peanut butter and jelly Uncrustable sandwich. I don't know if you've ever seen those things, but like individually packaged peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the crust already off. When I was little, I had to get my mom, I had to ask her to cut the crust off, and she never would. So now I get to buy them that way. Well, I had it, and I'm munching on that sandwich, strawberry jam, way better than grape, and I'm munching on that sandwich, hanging out with my leg, and we're kind of doing our thing. And I realized, like, man, I'm pretty comfortable right now. You know, I'm getting really comfortable. Hawaii is pretty nice. This isn't so bad, and I realize, like, I'm way too comfortable. And I don't know if you've ever been there, like, you get home after a long day, and you sit on the couch, and you're like, I guess I'm sleeping here, because I cannot get up, you know. That's what I was approaching, and I realized if I don't get up right now and finish this race, it's not going to happen. And I didn't go all the way to Hawaii to do 132 miles of a 140.6-mile race, so I'm like, let's go, let's do this. I need to get up and start pushing forward. So I grab my prosthetic leg, I go to put it on, and it doesn't fit. And I was a little confused at first, so I pick it up, and I look at it like maybe I grabbed someone else's leg, right? And I'm like, no, this is definitely my leg. I looked down at my limb, and it was swollen. Now I can't get my leg on. And it made sense. I was still a pretty new amputee, and it happens, the swelling, and now I can't get my leg on, and I feel absolutely defeated. I am defeated. I'm defeated. Every part of me wants to quit, you know. And I ask myself this question, Eric, how did you get yourself into this? I don't know if you've ever asked yourself that question before, but I asked myself that question. How did I get myself into this? I wanted to quit. This is not good. And at that point in time in my life, you know, I was experiencing a little bit of a challenge. And, you know, that's where everyone kind of comes into my story a little bit, because everyone faces some challenge and some obstacles and some adversity. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about that journey. And I know that God doesn't just help us get through challenges. He helps us grow through the challenges. And that's what I really want to share with you today. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to get back to that Ironman and finish that story in a moment. But I want to give a quick background of who I am. So I got a picture of this is this is not a Halloween picture of us dressed up in the 80s. This is from the mid 80s, and I'm the really good looking guy in the front row with the red sweater and the bowl cut. And I'm going to start rocking that haircut again next year, I think. Now that time is gone. But I look at this picture, and I'm grateful. I'm absolutely grateful. Didn't realize it at the time, or in high school, or college, or as a young adult. And now, you know, when I see that picture, it's like, man, what my parents valued mattered so much. You know, they did not value material things. They valued family. They valued love, support, hard work. That's how I grew up. My dad worked Sundays mostly, and my mom kind of stepped up and took charge and dragged me to church almost every Sunday. And I remember those days. I learned a little bit about God and who He is. For me, I didn't start a personal relationship with Christ right then and there, but so many seeds were planted. We were a sports family. My dad loves sports, so we were all into sports. My two older sisters, they were great at sports, and then there was me. But this is me in the 6th grade going out for football. It's kind of a cool picture. This is supposed to be an intimidating picture. I don't know why we took it in front of pink flowers. And I blame my parents for that. And you're not supposed to actually smile in football pictures. I didn't learn that until the 7th grade, but I couldn't find that picture, so we're stuck with this. But I love sports. I played them all. Baseball and football were my two big ones growing up. And because I loved sports, I had to appreciate school. And it was a school assignment that I did that ended up having a really big impact on my life. In 8th grade, my English teacher. Try to think back at who your English teacher was in the 8th grade. Mine was Mrs. Christ, and she gave us a homework assignment, a career research report. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I didn't know. And the mean thing was you weren't allowed to do this on being a professional athlete. So there goes my first 9 choices, right? So I'm like, I go home, I ask my parents. I don't remember what my mom said. I look at my dad, and I remember him standing there. He was standing across the table, and he said, you should check out the military. I was like, military, all right. Now, if you go back to the mid-'90s when I'm making this huge life decision, out of all the branches of service, you know, the Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force, like by far, I guess maybe this is just my opinion, but the Marine Corps had the best commercials on television. So that was my criteria for choosing my career. There was a commercial of a guy without a shirt, massive muscles, scaling a mountain, and he gets to the top and he slays a dragon, and he puts on his dress blues. I'm like, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And I had the privilege of serving as a Marine for 7 years, and that's what we did for training every day. We scaled mountains and slayed dragons. It was pretty cool. Do we happen to have any Marines out there? Happy birthday, Marine Corps. But you look really good for 247. That's right. Yeah, I love it. Semper Fidelis. But I did this report on the United States Marine Corps, and instantly, I was impacted with what the Marines represent, and it went bigger than that. It was military in general. Because at that point, I used to look up to our sports heroes, you know, John Elway, Joe Montana, Michael Jordan. You know, those were the men and women that I was like, I want to be a professional athlete. And then I did this report, and all of a sudden I'm like, no, it's the military veterans. Those are the men and women that I want to emulate. Those are the men and women that I want to emulate. And that was, honestly, the best timing for a report. You know, that's when I was building a foundation in my life, and now I had men and women to emulate. That was it. My grandfather served in the Korean War, 2 Bronze Stars. You know, I wanted to be like him. He was in the Army. My dad was in the Navy. My sister ended up in the Air Force. And, you know, my neighbors, I wanted to be like them, those men and women who not only did they the stories, the history, the rich history, valor, you know, heroes, but it said sacrifice. And you guys know that sacrifice. There's always someone sacrificing the way they live their life in order to provide freedom for our nation. And I knew that I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be part of that book. That was special to me. So right now, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for what you do and what you've done and what you continue to be. You know, you're still, you know, young kids look up to us. Now we're those veterans that people want to emulate, and we get to be that. When I see someone wearing a hat with, you know, a ship on it or a war or a campaign on it, I'm like, that's it. Hey, son, look at that gentleman right there. That's who you want to be. So thank you so much for your service and being that example. So I grew up, because that happens, you know, and the path that I took to get into the Marine Corps, I went to the United States Naval Academy at Navy. This is where I'd usually say we're a lot like West Point, but way better. But I'm not going to say that today because I don't want to insult anyone. But I went to Navy, and I played some rugby there. I studied mechanical engineering, ended up being one of the best decisions of my life. And I don't work as an engineer, but that's actually where I met my wife. She was also a student at the Naval Academy. I go to her for all my help in my classwork, not because I cared about my grades, but I just thought that she was really cute. And my strategy paid off. I got a picture of my wife right here. And she's the one on the left, if you're looking from out there. And we graduated 2006. A lot happened really fast. You know, we started new careers. Myself as a Marine Corps infantry officer, herself as a Navy special warfare officer, driving ships around the world. We had our first daughter, moved out to the West Coast, we're living our lives, married. It was awesome. When I look back, it was chaos. One of us was always deployed. We did 5 overseas deployments in just a few years. One of us was kind of always gone as we were raising our daughter, but we look back and we're just proud of those times. My last deployment was, let me share this first. my wife's last deployment, our fourth deployment. At this point in time, I had already said that, seeds were planted, for when I was pulled to church when I was growing up. When I went off to the Naval Academy and entered the service, because that wasn't my thing, because it was more of my mom's thing, that was kind of the first thing that fell off. I did not continue to go to church, and when I did, it was sparse, and sometimes just because I was feeling a little guilty, it's like maybe I'll go to church today or whatever, and that disappeared. And I realized even though I wasn't walking alongside God, He was still walking alongside me. And on my wife's last deployment, her sister was in town and invited me to go to the church that she was at. And I knew I grew up going to church, and my daughter was young, and I'm like, I should probably start taking my daughter to church. And living out in San Diego on Sundays, football games start at 10 o'clock, and I learned early on they wouldn't let you just drop your kid off at church and then go watch a football game and pick them up. So I started sitting through the services, and that's when I saw it differently, and I saw who Christ is and what a relationship with Christ is. And it was February in 2010 that I was saved and I became a Christian, and that was the best decision of my life. And the timing was really cool because after this deployment, my wife, our deployments actually overlapped. I left to go to Afghanistan right before she got back. She came back, I left, and my job in Afghanistan was pretty unique. I led a small team of 4 guys. We were embedded into an Afghan Army infantry company of about 125 soldiers. I've got a picture of our team right here. That's some of us. We're the good-looking guys without the hats on. And on the far right, that's our interpreter, Kazim, because we spoke a different language to the men and women, or the men that we were advising. And we were operating there. There's a picture of Helmand Province, Afghanistan, one of the villages we were at, just a desert environment. I thought it was beautiful. Next picture is of my corpsman, Doc Shrum, outside of a school hanging out with the kids. And it was those days, that's what I remember from Afghanistan, us outside of a school, hanging out with the villagers. We'd be playing with some of the kids. We'd play soccer for a little bit, and like, all right, we're going to finish our patrol. We're walking away. It's like, uh-oh, I'm missing a grenade. Hey, kids, get back here. That never really happened, I swear. But it was so cool. But just seeing the kids go to school, that was special. That's when I realized, okay, I'm serving a purpose larger than myself, and I appreciated that. And then on December 9th in 2011, my life changed. The day started pretty early, about 4:30, woke up, went on a patrol. This patrol, it was a dismounted patrol, meaning we were walking around a village. It was a newer area, dangerous area, and we were out and about on this patrol for about 5 hours. And every time I tell this story, that patrol gets a little bit longer. I could do that, though. It's my story, right? Nah, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. But we're finishing up the 6-hour patrol, and we're heading back to our patrol base. And there's about 1,000 meters between us and the patrol base. We're getting close, and that's when it happened. I stepped on an improvised explosive device, an IED, and I triggered an explosion underneath my right foot. I remember the experience vividly. It was, I was conscious throughout this, but I was dazed at first because I had a concussion. I didn't know exactly what had happened, but a violent force just picked me up and threw me to the ground onto my back, and my ears were ringing, a very high-pitched ringing sound. Life was in slow motion. I felt wetness on my left leg, up pretty high. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anything, and slowly things are coming back to me. I could smell like chemicals. I taste like the dust particles that are landing on my mouth and my lips, and slowly I'm like, okay, wait, I'm in Afghanistan. And I open my eyes, and a second earlier, it's a beautiful blue sky. Now I can't see it. It's full of smoke and dust, and that's when it hit me. It's like, oh my goodness, I just stepped on an IED. And I knew it because we had seen so many IEDs. That was the weapon that we saw over and over again. And when I knew I stepped on an IED, I knew I was bleeding, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't even feel pain. I thought for a moment that was it. I remember the 2 thoughts that went through my head after that. First, I thought I was going to heaven. And it wasn't scary. I don't know if I prepared myself for this, but it was like acceptance. Like I get to go, almost curiosity. It's like I get to go meet Jesus. And as I'm thinking about that, I picture my wife and my daughter's face, and I got scared. I remember picturing their face, and I was scared because there were still things on this earth that I wanted to do. And as I'm thinking about them, my corpsman, who we saw in that last picture, Mike Shrum, came running over to me, and started saving my life. That's what we do in the military, right? We take care of each other. So he's taking care of me. The Marines in the area, they came running over to us. Everyone now is doing their job. And the job changed from what we were doing to saving Captain McElvenny's life, and everyone's doing it. And I'm glad that I do remember this, because what I saw was amazing. Just young men just doing what they can in a chaotic environment to save my life. One group goes and sets a perimeter up for security. Another group goes to find a place for a helicopter to land, and they have to clear it of any other IEDs. Another group is getting ready to take me. They're getting a stretcher out and ready, and Corman's working on me, and everything's happening. And, next thing I know, I heard, like, the worst sound that I think I could have heard at that point. And there was another explosion behind me. I didn't even look. I looked into my Corman's eyes. He put his head down for a second. Another Marine stepped on an IED. So he put his head down for a second, and then he just stands up and sprints over to him. And we're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to clear a path to that Marine before his life is saved. But at that point in time, that Marine's life was more important to him than his own, so he gets up and risks his to go save that Marine. Next thing I know, I hear the helicopters. 2 helicopters are inbound. I could see them. I could hear them, and I'm just kind of praying. I'm praying that they get there, because I'm so uncomfortable. I'm in so much pain. And I just want them to get there before the Taliban gets there. And as they're getting closer, we start to get shot at. So this bad day that's already worse is now worse. And I heard over the radio someone called the helicopter off. It was like, no, you can't come into this. It's a hot landing zone. And I don't know who that pilot was. He didn't know me. He didn't know that I had a child at home. He didn't know Matthew Miller. But he saw 2 Marines on the ground that needed him. And he said, no, I'm coming in. Someone throws smoke. And I remember seeing green smoke below. And he's like, I see the green smoke. I'm coming in. He landed. It was chaos. It was between myself and Matt, who wasn't too far. It landed between us, and everyone was just doing their job. Everyone had a responsibility, and everyone was doing it in this dangerous, chaotic environment. They pick me up on a stretcher and take me and put me in the back of the helicopter. I'm now laying next to Matthew Miller. It buttons up, and it takes off. It was a 7-minute flight from where we were to the surgical facility. And I'll always remember that flight for 2 reasons. One, that's when I realized that I had lost the lower part of my right leg. I didn't know it until then. It's like, I lost my leg. And then as we were coming down, there was a crew chief in the back next to me and Matthew. Matthew just lost his left leg. 19 years old, this is his first deployment, lost his leg, saving my life. And we're laying there together, and the crew chief starts counting down. He's like, 30 seconds before we land. Brace yourselves. And I remember just kind of holding on to the stretcher, and you could feel the helicopter move around a little bit, and he keeps counting down. He's like, 25 seconds. 20 seconds. And then Matthew looks over at me. He says, sir, you first. As in, let them take you off the helicopter first. I can hang on a little longer. I'll never forget that, right? That's the type of character that the men and women in our military are made up of. He's not thinking about himself. He was thinking about me. I thought that was special. Matthew's awesome. Matthew, he was Lance Corporal Miller. Now he's Staff Sergeant Miller. He's still in the Marine Corps on a prosthetic leg. He's with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, getting ready to deploy pretty soon. He's a hero. He's a good guy. We landed. I don't remember who they even took off the helicopter first, but I rushed into surgery, woke up after surgery, and I was missing my right leg below the knee. Bandages all up and down my left leg and my arm, IVs in me. I was in bad shape, but I was alive. And this is what really starts the next journey. And this is kind of what I wanted to get to. That was the bad stuff, and now this is the good stuff coming up. But, yeah, my life changed that day, and it was tough, and it was hard. It was difficult on myself, physically and emotionally and mentally, but it was difficult on my family as well, my wife and my daughter and my parents. But a couple things stick with me now. Like when I think back to that day, I thought I was in control. And as a Marine Corps infantry officer, I was in control of a lot of stuff. I planned that mission. I planned the primary route. I knew our checkpoints. I planned an alternate route. If someone gets hurt, this is what we're going to do. Hey, if we need to bring in a landing helicopter, here's our landing zone. I had it all planned out. I needed people checking in with me on the radio because I was in control. And I'll never forget when I stepped on that IED. I felt that, for me, it was a physical representation of me not being in control. I felt that control being ripped away from me. Now, I need help. I am not in control. Not only do I need other people to help me out, but this is for God. So that was kind of helpful for me, because sometimes we think that we are in control, but we're not. And then, what's next? What's next after that? I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to think. There was a lot of fear of the unknown. I didn't know what was going to go on. I didn't know what it was like having one leg. I didn't know if it was going to be me still. But all I know is I started my relationship with Christ almost, a year prior to that. The timing was amazing because now I had a rock to go to lean on. And I had a wife who was a very strong Christian, and that helped me through. Some people said, how did you make it through that? It's like, well, I really didn't. God made it through with me. He doesn't put anything on your plate that he can't handle for you. And I'll tell you, I leaned on him. And I know, like, Psalm 46:10, God says, be still and know that I am God. So when you don't know your path, that's what I go back to. It's like, okay, I want to do something. I want to be in control, but I know at the end he is in control. And I'll tell you, like, one of the big things that he did at that point in time in my life is he put people in my life that I needed. And the first person that I'm going to talk about who really opened my eyes to a lesson that I needed, it seems simple, but it was so helpful. That was my daughter. My daughter was 5 years old when I was injured. Her name is Lupe. There's a picture of her sitting next to me in the hospital bed right there. Does anyone have a 5-year-old? Does anyone remember what it's like having a 5-year-old? Yeah, everyone should rent a 5-year-old for a couple days because they're awesome. And I'll tell you, like, I was scared how she was going to handle this because she used to look at me like Superman, and I was no longer Superman. And if you go back to December 9th, 2011, in San Diego, my wife got that phone call. And she actually missed that phone call because she kind of misses every phone call. I don't even know why she has a phone sometimes. But she listened to the voicemail and called him back. It was headquarters of Marine Corps, a gunnery sergeant, telling her that I had been injured, that I was in critical condition, I had lost a leg, I was going into surgery, and they were going to get back to her. And it's a hard first phone call to get. But both of us being military, we knew a phone call was way better than someone showing up at the door, so she handled it. They talked a few times over the night, and the next day, before Lupe went off to kindergarten, my wife told her, she sat her down and said, Lupe, Daddy got hurt at work. Daddy lost one of his legs, and Daddy's going to be coming home. We need to be there to support him. And Lupe, she quickly asked the question. She said, well, when is Daddy going to be home? And my wife said he's going to be home in about 6 or 7 days. That was kind of the estimate that she was given. And Lupe, she took about 10 seconds to process all of this information. And then she smiled. And she said, Daddy's going to be home for Christmas. And I thought that was so cool. It was such a negative event for me and my wife and my parents and my friends. My 5-year-old daughter just so purely pulled something positive from that situation. And I was in Germany on my way back when my wife told me that. And I was like, wow, I called the nurses in. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be back for Christmas. And we weren't supposed to be together for Christmas that year. Like many of the years prior to that, we were going to spend a Christmas together finally. So that was a silver lining. And it's like, it's a kid's way of thinking, right? Like, when do we lose that? When do we lose that kid's way of thinking? And when you think about it, what did Lupe do? That was just Lupe being grateful for what she had, right? She was grateful for the blessings that she had. She saw it as a blessing that I was still alive. That she was grateful for that. And I realized, wow, I need to do that, right? I need to look at my blessings. I need to look at my blessings and be grateful for them. And there's so many blessings in my life, right? I'm alive to be Lupe's dad. She's 16 years old now. I would have missed a lot. I didn't, though. It's amazing. I'm grateful that I have my left leg. I didn't used to like my left leg until I lost my right one. Now I love this thing. Legs do a lot of cool stuff. I'm grateful for these prosthetics that I have. I got my running leg right here. I have a leg that I ride my bike in, a cycling leg. I got a water leg. I got my everyday walking leg on right now. This thing does some cool stuff. I'm grateful for the technology. I'm absolutely grateful that I had the privilege of serving our country as a Marine. That's something I wanted to do for a long time. Thank you. Thank you. There's just so many blessings in our life, and when we forget to look at those blessings, that's when we can become ungrateful. So I just remind you, when things aren't going our way, or we're struggling, or we're having a rough day, just think of some of the blessings that have been placed into your life, and think about Lupe. That's what she sees. She sees the blessings. So that was cool. Another person that was put in my life was my commanding officer, and he was Major Ike Moore. He's just a big giant of a man, awesome leader. After about 2 weeks after my injury, after my last surgery, when I started going in a good direction, he sent me an email. I opened it up. I'm laying in a hospital bed. I open it up on an iPad, and I read it, and it says, "Hey, Eric, let me know when you're going to run your first marathon." And I remember reading this email and thinking to myself, like, wow, what a jerk, right? Well, why would you say that? But I also knew what he was doing, and he knew what I needed to hear to get inspired, to stop worrying about what it is that I can't do anymore, and let's get a goal, and let's start pushing towards it. And because he challenged me at running a marathon, right? He challenged me at that. I'm a Marine, right? I had to step it up a notch. I'm like, I'm going to run an Ironman. That's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a goal to run an Ironman triathlon. You know, because, hey, don't put a limit on what God can do in your life. It felt impossible. It did. When I said it, it's like, I don't really swim well. Never really ridden a bike like that, but I'm gonna do it. I'm going to run an Ironman. And I set that goal. It inspired me. We started pushing towards it, and so many people came to my aid. One, I had a great church family out in San Diego. That was huge. I had people wake up in the morning and go run with me. It was cool. Sometimes it was annoying. It's like I wanted to keep sleeping. But no, these people wanted me to reach this goal. I loved that. Moving forward, like I stood up my first prosthetic leg because it was hard to concentrate on that Ironman because there were some dark days. There were some dark days where I didn't want to get out of bed. And that's where I needed my wife. My wife was the one that says, well, let's pray. And we would do a little devotion every day, and you know, it was helpful. But I couldn't concentrate on that Ironman when I couldn't even get out of bed, so we broke it down into milestones. Milestone 1 was learn how to walk. Learned how to walk, stood on my first prosthetic leg. It was exactly 2 months after my injury. When my Marines got back from Afghanistan, 2 weeks after that, I was standing to greet them without any assistance. I was on a prosthetic leg. It was awesome. And we joined them, hopped in formation with them. We marched to their families. It was really cool. I had to learn how to swim. I swim without a prosthetic, so I go clockwise. I have to aim left to go straight, but it's all right. We figure it out, a little Kentucky windage, adapt and overcome and take pride in that. I learned how to run. Next thing I know, I'm signed up for my first triathlon. It's a sprint triathlon, another milestone, not quite the Ironman, but you do a small swim and bike and run. And I got a picture of that, and I'll never forget this day because I woke up and put on my triathlon gear, and I'm like, I'm going to go run this thing. And I walk out in the living room and I grab my gear and drive up and do this race, and my wife sees me, and her eyes get real big. And I'm thinking, like, I think she's checking me out, And then she kind of smiles and laughs a little bit. And I'm like, what's so funny, Rachel? And she says, I'm sorry, I've never seen you in spandex before. I was like, oh, great. Now's the time to bring that up. Now I'm self-conscious. Does it make my butt look big? And she's like, yeah, it does a little bit. We'll work on that after this race, right? But it was cool. I went out and did that race, and in that first year, I did 3 races, 3 triathlons, all of different distances, and I ran the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. It was awesome. Next thing I know, I got a call from an organization built with chocolate milk, and they were, remember like the Got Milk campaign? This is the Got Chocolate Milk campaign. They're marketing chocolate milk as a recovery drink for athletes because chocolate milk has all of the necessary nutrients, minerals, and proteins that your body needs to recover after a difficult workout. I was under contract to say that for a year. I'm sorry. It just kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit. But it was awesome, man. They called me up. They said, Eric, we're putting together a team to go compete at the Ironman World Championships. Do you want to be part of it? I was like, yes. Sign me up. And then their second question was, are you lactose intolerant by any chance? And I was like, nope, nah. And even if I was, I wouldn't tell you because I would just like gut it out. I really want to do this race. So I'm on this team to go compete at the Ironman World Championships. And at this point, I had someone come up to me and say, the stars are really aligning for you. I'm like, yeah, I guess in a way, I think that God is lining things up. Because it's been a pretty cool path how things were happening. Because on my team, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and on my team, the next picture, on the guy on the far right, we have Hines Ward. He was one of Hines, good guy, retired Pittsburgh Steeler wide receiver, and he also won Dancing with the Stars. You might know him from there, I don't know. But he had no fear of linebackers going across the middle, but he's definitely afraid of sharks. And before the Ironman, he says, hey, Eric, you think there's any sharks out there? And I'm like, man, that's what you're thinking about right now? I was like, yeah, there's tons of them. But the way I see it, if I'm a shark and I'm swimming underneath and I look up and I see me, I'm going to be like, oh, I already got to him. We're going to go get someone else, right? Which I think is legit, because I've been in the ocean a lot and I have not been eaten by a shark. So I think that's pretty legit. But in the middle, that was Paula Newby-Fraser. Can you put that picture back up? Paula was our coach. Paula is awesome. She looks really sweet in this picture. I'll just leave it there, all right? Yeah, she's an 8-time Ironman world champion. No one's done what she's done in the sport. So cool. So now I get hooked up with her, and she's training us. I was definitely intimidated by her, but just what she has done. They call her the Queen of Kona, because no one has done what she's done in the sport. Kona is where the Ironman World Championship is, and what she would preach over and over again was consistency and discipline. She's like, you got to do the work day in and day out. She wrote our training schedule, 7 days a week. There's only 7 days in a week, so every day we got some type of training, 2 or 3 workouts a day. Like, I knew exactly what training I had to do. I knew exactly what my heart rate needed to be on certain days. I knew how many yards in the pool I wanted to do. I had this thing down, and I was executing this thing really well. And at one point, my wife said, hey, what's your bike ride today? I'm like, I got 2.5 hours, and I'm going to hit zone 4 and make my heart rate here and do this and pedal this fast here. And she's like, all right, what did you read out of the Bible today? I'm like, oh, I was going to get to that a little bit later, And she's like, well, I think your priorities are a little bit off right now. And I realized, wow, you are right. And I'll tell you what, the consistency and discipline, that's important. That's important. Yeah, when you're training for an Ironman, you got to do the work day in and day out. But any relationship that you want to be strong, in your marriage, in your friendships, you have to be deliberate and work at it. And I have a relationship with Christ, and I have to be deliberate and work at it. So I I realized, hey, I was wrong. I need to be that deliberate about my devotion time and make sure that I front load that in the morning before I get into my crazy workouts. So again, my wife, she steps up really big. Having a strong partner and accountability is very important to me. All right, I want to get back to that Ironman, but first, quick, one more story about Lupe. When I was injured, I was given a handicap placard, right? And I just was not ready to be handicapped at that point in time in my life, so I threw it away. And I don't know if I just complained for the next 6 months or what, but I got another one in the mail, and I'm like, let me see this. And I was living in San Diego, and I drive a truck, and I swear the parking spots in San Diego are a little bit smaller. So I was like, I put it in my glove box for a rainy day. And I realized it doesn't rain a lot in San Diego. So I started using it on sunny days. I'd go into work, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? It looks like a long walk. I think I'll be handicapped today. I pull in my handicap spot and use my placard. And I'd get out of my truck, and I'd limp a little bit. Like, I got the leg thing going on, if you guys were wondering why I'm parking there. I just wear shorts a lot. And one day I was with Lupe, and we pull into the grocery store. And I remember it was Ralph's. That was the grocery store. And there was no parking anywhere. And I was like, I don't have the patience today. I zip to the front of the store and pull into my handicap spot. And I grab my placard and I hang it up. And I'm like, Lupe, let's go. And we get out of the truck and we start walking in to the store. And she says, Dad, what was that magic blue ticket? And I'm like, oh, that thing? Well, because I only have one leg. Because Daddy only has one leg, I'm allowed to park right there when I use that ticket. And without missing a beat, she says, but Dad, you have 5 legs. You have a running leg, a biking leg, a water leg, a right leg, and you have your left leg. And I was like, yeah, little brat, I'm walking into the store, counting, yeah, I do have 5 legs. And I'm walking through the aisles of the store, and I'm feeling guilty. I have nothing against handicap parking, but I just ran 6 miles that day. I was training for an Ironman triathlon. Someone needed that spot more than me. I was using my leg. And I realized this. I was using my leg as an excuse when it was convenient for me, and it wasn't just with parking. It was with training. I'd go on a run with some buddies, and if I couldn't keep up with them because they were going a little too fast and I was getting a little too tired, I'd be like, "You guys keep going. I got some leg issues going on." I'll walk it in, and I was using my leg, and it was kind of holding me back from reaching my potential. And I realized, hey, I'm never gonna. I made a promise to myself. I'm never gonna use this stupid leg as an excuse again. And I share this with you, not because I'm extremely proud of it, but we're human, and we use excuses to get out of things and to prevent us from being a little bit uncomfortable. And I challenge you. Next time you're going to use an excuse to get out of something, ask yourself, what is this holding me back from reaching? And I know I do it all the time. It's like I see someone who I really want to go and pray with and pray for, and I'm like, oh, yeah, they're probably just going to think I'm weird. Maybe I'm not going to do it. And, that's the me getting uncomfortable thing. And I'm like, stop it. I'm going to stop doing that. Sometimes it's fun being uncomfortable, being vulnerable, and going out and doing it. So I just challenge you to get rid of those excuses and then go out and do it. All right, let's get back to that Ironman. So we're back in Hawaii. Thank goodness, right? It's nice. It's sunny outside again. It was actually a nice day. But I was on the side of the road. I can't get my leg on because my limb is swollen. I'm out of energy. I did just eat that peanut butter and jelly sandwich, though. Things aren't going my way, and I wanted to quit. But I knew I wasn't going to quit, right? I'm a Marine, right? We got so many military veterans in here, and that's just not a part of our language. Like, we don't quit. I knew I wasn't going to quit, but I had to figure out how to get from where we were to the finish line. I'm like, okay, I need to get this leg on. So I ended up laying back and elevating my limb, letting my heart rate come down. My limb, some of the swelling went out. Yeah, it must have looked funny because I saw people were running by me, and they're like, "Are you all right, man?" I'm just hanging out, like, with my nub in the air. And I'm like, yeah, what? You've never seen this? That's weird. And they would just keep running by. And then after a couple minutes, I realized, like, okay, I think I'm ready. And I grabbed my prosthetic leg, and I jam it on. It didn't go all the way on, but it was enough that I could start walking. So I did. I started walking. I was like, okay. Every step was a little bit closer to the finish line. Next thing I know, my leg was on. It was on. It was a little bit uncomfortable, but it wasn't unbearable. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I usually have a sleeve that goes from my leg. It's like a silicone sleeve that goes from my leg. You pull up over your thigh because it helps keep your leg on. Because when you're running and your leg falls off, that's a bad day. So I pulled that thing up nice and high, and I start running, and I'm kind of doing my thing, and the miles are dropping off, and then I get to the last mile, and it was crazy. It was so cool. People were lining the streets. There's cowbells ringing all over the place. People were yelling, cheering. People were yelling my name. They're like, "Go, Eric." I'm like, they know me. Yeah. After the race, I realized my bib said Eric. I'm like, I remember seeing that and the realization of maybe they didn't know me. Maybe they just read it. It's like, oh, well, I needed that at that point in time, and I thought that they knew me. And I just kept running. I'm doing my thing. I come up to the finish line, and I come busting across that finish line. Got a picture of it here, and I'll never forget this. I came busting across that finish line, 11 hours, 54 minutes. And I can't put the emotions into words. I can't make that face. I don't even know how that happened, but it felt so good. It was so cool coming across that finish line, accomplishing that. And I'll tell you, it was like pretty neat. Thank you so much. It was pretty neat doing that and being able to go and accomplish that. And I do like that picture, but the picture was just me. Even though it's like you get an individual time, it really is a team effort, and so many people were part of my journey. And I just think it's so cool when you can do something that impacts someone else and someone else's journey. That's when you're doing good things. So yeah, I think it's important to celebrate accomplishments, and yeah, we did. And then how can you continue to grow? And I've run 8 of these silly things now, and I'm still at it. And then 2019 hit, and 2020 the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics were about to happen. And although they got shifted a whole year, I decided to throw my name into the hat and try to qualify to represent Team USA. And I was the very last one in the world to qualify in my category. And I got a picture. I ended up getting to go and represent Team USA in Tokyo. Thank you. Thank you. And don't judge me, but I have pantyhose with ice around my neck. I thought that was a horrible idea, but our coaches, it was so hot and so humid there, but I thought it was so cool. Right before the race, I was getting ready. It was a commercial break. This thing was televised. It was nuts. And I look down and I see the USA on my chest. And I'm like, oh, this is it came full circle. Like, I got to serve our country in uniform, and now I get to represent our country in an athletic uniform. And it was so cool. Thank you. Yeah. It was so cool being part of a team again, and especially wearing the red, white, and blue and being part of this country, in a country that so many people here this evening decided that was worth protecting, and I'm grateful for it, just the freedoms that we have and what we get to represent. I got a quick video of coming across that finish line.
How strong Sealy was going to be in the run. As we see McElvenny wrapping things up for the United States here. A strong run for him has moved him from 8th all the way up to 6th.
That's a great showing for Eric. Look at that. There's a smile.
Eric McElvenny's first Paralympic Games will net him a top 6 finish. Not bad for a guy who didn't punch his ticket to Tokyo until less than 2 months ago.
That's right. And we have a Naval Academy grad, former Marine. So here's a veteran crossing the line for us in the United States.
Great 5K from McElvenny to gain a couple of spots here and finish.
Thank you. Thank you. The experience was overwhelming. I loved it. And it was funny because my family couldn't go over to Tokyo because of the pandemic. Spectators couldn't come. And when I got home, my wife had watched it on television, and I got home, and yeah, she gave me a hug and stuff. And then one of her first questions was, so why were you running so slow at the end of that race? She's like, I thought it was a sprint triathlon. Didn't look like you were sprinting. And I explained to her, like, hey, I knew I wasn't going to catch the guy in front of me, and the guy behind me she's like, all right, that sounds like an excuse. But anyway, she said, I looked up the 2024 Olympics and Paralympics, and they're in Paris, France. So I've decided that you're going to try to qualify for that, too. Tomorrow morning, you got a big bike workout, and then we're going to the gym, and then you're going to go swimming. So, like, she got to, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I experienced it, like, what's next? I want to go try to win a medal. But, that's our goal, to keep pushing forward. Can you put up that next picture, please? And this is kind of cool. I loved it. And I'm glad someone got this shot. It's me coming across the finish line, and, I kind of got that finger in the air. And it wasn't because I was number one, because I got sixth. I would have been like, but at that point in time, just that coming across, I was emotional. I was emotional, and I looked up and pointed up to God, and that's just what I thought of at that time. And someone at that exact moment, snapped that picture, and I thought it was so cool. And through like my whole story and this whole journey, it's been a lot of fun. But there are times like we almost stopped doing this Paralympic thing. There were times I didn't want to keep going for that Ironman, and what my wife and I would do is we just stop and pray about it. And it's like, okay, when God gives us a sign to stop, that's when we do it. But as of right now, kind of keep going forward. And that's kind of how we've been really living our life. And it's been very helpful. Because when I was injured, if you go back to the day I was injured, there was a moment I thought I was dying. I thought that I was going to die, and two thoughts jumped into my head. First, I thought about going to heaven, and then I thought about my wife and my daughter, right? And I realized, like, those are the only two things I thought of. I didn't think about, like, the truck that I was driving or my house or the shoes that I was wearing, or didn't even think about work. I thought about my faith in Christ, and I thought about my family, and I realized those are my two priorities. And I just want to make sure that I continue living those priorities out, because when things are going well with my relationship with Christ and my relationship with my wife, then it trickles down, and life is good. And that's when I can really see the blessings in my life. So I do, there's my family right there. In the middle now, that's Lupe. She's just turned 16. It's kind of crazy. And then the front, that's Will. William is, he's an awesome, quiet, caring little guy when he's sleeping. And then he, wakes up, and it's like a savage. He's a ball of energy. And then we have Lupe, too, in the pink shirt over there. She was mad that we named her that. No, that's Elise. But she looks like Lupe, so some of Lupe's friends call her that. And there's my wife. Do we have one more picture of my family? Yeah, okay, yeah. My dog was mad, because I stopped showing a picture of her, and I was like, okay, I'll start. My dog doesn't talk, but I think she was mad, so I put this picture up as well, because there's our dog. But that's us. That's one of the things that I'm grateful for. And I do want to share, in closing out, when I was coming back from Tokyo, that was a huge part of my life for months. Like, the qualifying process, I know I breezed through it. But it was every morning, what I'm going to eat, what workouts I'm going to do, how am I going to get a little bit faster, how am I going to qualify, how am I going to get to this country. And then we qualify, and then I actually moved out to Colorado Springs to Olympic Training Center. My wife encouraged me to go. I lived there for 3 weeks and trained with the best and the best and the best. And we went to Tokyo and did this race, and then all of a sudden it was done. And this is and people said, oh, hey, you're going to experience the post-Olympic depression. I'm like, the post-Olympic depression, what is that? And I experienced it. Because, what I was working so hard for so long is all of a sudden gone. It's like, wow, there is that, gap. There's that void. That's crazy. but it didn't knock me over. It didn't knock me over because my identity is not as an athlete. My identity is in Christ, and I still had that. Even if I would have won a medal, that would have been great. Maybe like the wave would have went a little bit longer, but eventually, like, what is that medal? And that's one thing that, Jesus is not like a medal. Jesus is forever. And I love the fact that the God who created this universe has invited us into his story, right? He created man sinned, and God came up with a plan. He sent his son, Jesus, to come and live as a human here on earth. And then he died a horrible death, sacrifice on the cross. And he did that for me. He did that for me because I sin. I mess up. And now these sins are taken care of so I can have this relationship with God, so I can have eternity with him forever. And I want everyone to experience that. So if I could just close in prayer, that'd be wonderful. If you bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for the men and women who have served our country, who has kept us free, who have sacrificed so much of their life for the people here in this country. We thank you for the communities and the example that we get to set. And God, I just ask that not only do you keep this country safe, but you help us be a beacon of light for our community so that people can see you through us. And God, I just ask that you continue to give us strength and courage in difficult times. And as we go out into the world, help us get uncomfortable to bring people to you. And God, if we don't have that strong relationship with you, please work in our hearts to start that relationship. Do everything in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Let's thank you. Tonight we come together to thank veterans. So here's what I would like to do. All of the veterans remain standing. Those that haven't served, would you just go ahead and sit? I want you just to remain standing for just a moment. All of these who have served were willing to put their life on the line so that we could do what we're doing right now, to have a freedom, to be able to celebrate. Some of you have lost a loved one in battle while they were serving to protect freedom. If you're somebody that's lost a loved one in battle tonight, would you stand? Let's go ahead and give all of these amazing people a round of applause tonight. Veterans, you may be seated. Eric, thank you for coming and being a part of things. I met Eric through one of our friends, Ken Barner, out in Pittsburgh. And there's a part of Crossroads Ministries out there. We met Eric when we went out for a Liberty Church Network one-day refuel. Eric addressed a room of about 200 pastors and Christian workers, and he made an impact, and he's real. He doesn't just live it in a room like this. He lives it continually, and I just want to encourage you tonight, if you don't know Christ, he'll change your life, and it'll be for the better. Take a moment and think about your relationship with him. Eric, you can go ahead and sit down at this time. And what I want to do is just turn your attention to the video screen. And then after the video, John Branyan is going to come back up, and he and the crew will go ahead and close us out with a little bit of fun this evening.
Let me be the first to congratulate you on a job well done and call you a United States Marine. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I say your name. Do solemnly swear. To support and defend. The Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies,
December 1966. It was quite an experience where every night you listen to machine gun fire and bombing nearby. It took about 3 years to get over the fact that I couldn't go to a 4th of July event because I would hit the ground thinking we were getting hit. There, and I prayed every day. Really got me closer to God and trusting in Him while I was there. Thank you very much.
I would just like to say thank you for your service and your sacrifices for our freedom and protection for our country.
Thank you for your service and your sacrifices.
I just want to say thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service. So much appreciated.
Thank you so much for your sacrifice.
Thank you for your service. Appreciate everything that veterans do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for the sacrifice of giving all for our freedoms. We are forever grateful for everything you've done.
Thank you, veterans, for your service.
Thank you for your service, and God bless you, and we love you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you for your service, and may God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you, veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, veterans. To all of our veterans, we say thank you and we pray for you. Thank you for your service.
God bless you and thank you for your service.
I don't feel like doing comedy. I have never been in the service, and I didn't know much about the service. But I have two sons, and both of them wound up going into the service. And here's the thing that I learned about the service, having never been in it. Both of my boys, one of my boys was a difficult child. We had 4 children, and if you have multiple children, you know that there's one child that you refer to as that child. You know, that child is the one that makes you start watching CSI, you know, to see if you can figure out a way to get away with it, hide the evidence. Well, that child was Timothy. He was our first son, and he tried from the time he was a little kid to figure out ways to get us to kill him. It had to be intentional. He was a source of frustration and tears and yelling and screaming. And by the time he got to be a teenager, I didn't think he was going to be okay. I honestly thought he was going to be in jail or he was going to be dead. That was what I thought. And I have got a theology that says everything is in God's hands, and I wasn't sure how God was going to turn that into good, but I was convinced that Tim was going to be dead or in jail. Those were his paths. And he wound up going into the Air Force because he got a job working at a terrible place, putting noodles in a bag for 9 hours a day. And he said, "What am I going to do? This is terrible." And I said, "Yeah, well, maybe you should try to have a skill or something." And so he went in, talked to an Air Force recruiter, went into the Air Force, and I thought he was going to wash out. I thought he'd wash out. I thought he'd be back in a few weeks, getting a fight at basic training or something like that. This is the confidence that I had in my boy. And he made it through basic training. And I will tell you that I have never, ever been more emotional in my life than standing watching him graduate from basic training. Not even my own wedding. It was an amazing experience because my boy is different from having been in the military. My youngest son, Andrew, was not a problem. He was a pretty go-along to get-along guy, and he decided he was going to go into the Air Force 2 years ago. And I thought when Andrew went into the Air Force, it's like he's going to wash out too. Not because he's going to get in a fight, but just because he's a wimp. You know, he's just not going to be able to do it. He's not going to be able to cut the mustard. He made it through basic training, and I watched him graduate in Lackland. And Andrew came home recently, two weeks ago. Andrew came home. And he said something to me that his brother said when he came home for the first time. And this is how I know it's true, because I know they didn't conspire, I know they didn't compare notes. Both of my boys, independently of each other and multiple years apart, when they came home, said, "You know what it is about the Air Force, is the quality of people." They said, "I come home now, and my friends are just where they always were. My friends are doing the same things that they were doing when I left, and they have no purpose, and they have no direction. They don't know what they're doing." And both of my boys, independently of each other, said that to me. And so you know what I think? I think it's the truth. I think that there is something about military people. I think there's something about men and women in the service that sets them apart. I've never been in, but I believe what my boys tell me. And so as somebody who trusts what his sons say, I also want to say thank you for being who you are, for doing what you do. Like I talked about earlier, it's the little things that people do that make all of the difference. We don't really need more people in the spotlight. We don't really need more people making a big show of things. What I do up here on stage is talk about things that happen out there. None of the things that I talk about on stage actually happened on stage. They happened out there, which is where you guys are. That's where everybody is. It occurred to me a few years ago as I was flying home from some show, I was watching movies. You know how they put movies in the backs of the seats of the airplanes on long flights? And you can watch those movies for free if you watch somebody else's screen. You can't hear anything, but you know, it's almost as more fun to make up your own dialogue anyway. So I'm watching a silent movie on somebody else's screen, and it was a couple, and they were dancing. Lights were low, and they were dancing, and it was a very romantic setting. And then the lights faded, and then the lights came back up again, and it was a new scene, and they were sitting around the breakfast table. So they had a night together, and then the lights came up, and they were sitting at the breakfast table. Hair was messed up, and there was eggs, and there was bacon, and there was a little flour in a vase sitting on the table, and the two of them were talking. I'm not sure what they were talking about. But the question that went through my mind is, who made that breakfast? Where'd that breakfast come from? I mean, the last time I saw this couple, they were enraptured in each other's arms, and then the lights come up, and poof, there's breakfast there on the table. And I thought, you know, this is the reason that many Americans are so disenfranchised and so sad and so angry and so bitter, is because they think that what they see on television and what they see on the screens is real life. They think that's what real life is. And they look at their own lives and they go, well, that doesn't happen to me. I don't go from dancing in the moonlight to breakfast. Well, nobody does. Where life happens is in between those scenes. That's where life happens. Real life is not one spectacular moment to the next spectacular moment. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of day-to-day, mundane, grinding it out when no one's watching and no one is applauding. And most of the people are actually fighting you while you're trying to do it. What I learned from both of my sons is that that's what the military is. There's a lot of stuff that you do in the military that you don't want to do, but you do it. Why? Because it's your duty. It's because someone else is relying on you to do it. And when they start talking like that, when they start giving me their military talk, it occurs to me that even though I'm not in the military, there's still people that are depending on me to do what I do. And there's still people that it is my duty to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to stand where I'm supposed to stand. I'm supposed to help other people if they need my help. All of those things are things that the military, they eat and sleep, and it's in them. But the rest of us, we think that we're supposed to go from one spectacular scene to the next spectacular scene. So what I appreciate is the reminder that duty and hard work and effort and thankless perseverance is the backbone of this nation. And when you can't cut it, the military has somebody who has your back. And when we can't cut it, God is there to pick us up. And if he doesn't pick us up, then he's got some other plan. There is absolutely no fear. There is no condemnation. There is no death for those of us who are in Christ Jesus. We're going to close. Thank you for your service. Thank you for teaching this non-military guy a valuable lesson. So to all the veterans, one more round of applause, and then we're done. God bless you guys.
Real quick, Gary Varvel has some merchandise with him this evening, and I would encourage you to go back and bless him and be a part of that. On your way out tonight for veterans, there's a little star that's cut out of a flag. And it's for you to take, and it's just a simple reminder for all the veterans this evening. They're back there on the table on your way out as you're going out through these doors. I want to ask Gary Varvel to come and close us in prayer this evening. I want you to pray for the veterans and make sure and thank a veteran tonight. But I want to encourage you to thank this guy and pray for him because he is on the front lines in a different way each and every day out there making a difference in our culture and our society. So remember him in your prayers and thank him this evening too.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate this church, and I appreciate Pastor Lily for putting this all together. And I thank you for the great turnout that was here tonight. And I appreciate Eric. I appreciate your service, and I appreciate your story. God is still writing your story. Obviously, you still have young children, and I can tell you from personal experience, it just keeps getting sweeter and sweeter. Those who are in the Lord, I mean, God just blesses, and if we stay faithful. So, and if you're here and you don't know, if you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, I would pray that maybe you would make that decision even tonight. And if you have some questions, then ask Pastor John or myself. I would be happy to talk with you. There are other people here, Pastor Josh in the back as well. But let's pray and we'll be dismissed. Father, thank you so much for this nation that we love, this place we call home for this time. Those of us in Christ, we recognize that we're just strangers passing through, that our real home is with you in heaven. But you have blessed this nation more than any other nation because we have put you first. Our founders founded this nation based on biblical truth. And Lord, we repent of the sin and how we have drifted so far from you. I would pray for our nation that you would bring a revival. I pray for each one of us individually that we would recommit our lives to you even tonight. But Lord, I also thank you for the sacrifice of Jesus Christ who died for our sins and then rose again to offer us eternal life with you. I pray that also thanking you for the sacrifice of men and women across this nation who have, many who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, many who have lost limbs, many who have, lives have been really radically changed for this time period on this earth because they love this country and wanted to serve and to keep the freedoms for our families and the next generation. Lord, we can't thank you enough. And we ask that you be merciful to us as we go out from this place. Be gracious to us. And we give all the praise and glory to you. And we love you in Jesus' name. Amen. You are dismissed.